After 5 years of marriage, I was still childless. One day, my angry mother-in-law pushed me hard and spoke loudly. "You are not a real woman. You cannot give birth." She called me a she-male and ordered me to leave the room immediately and sleep on the balcony. I was stunned by her reaction, but sadly, my husband still stood with his mother and supported her. I left the room immediately and planned to take action, but after 1 month. My name is Emma, and I want to share my story. It's a story of love, conflict, and ultimately, the struggle for independence. 5 years ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I was a 32-year-old marketing executive, dedicated to my career and passionate about my work. I married David, who was 36, and we both shared dreams of building a life together. But life took a turn that I never expected. David and I met at a corporate event. He was charming, ambitious, and we quickly fell in love. Our wedding felt like the beginning of a fairy tale. We were eager to start a family, but we also wanted to enjoy our freedom for a while. So, we decided to wait a couple of years before having children. Looking back, that decision seems innocent enough, but little did I know it would lead to years of pressure and disappointment. Things changed dramatically when David's father, Mike, had a stroke. The family insisted we move into their home in Chicago to help care for him. I didn't want to. I loved our little apartment filled with memories and laughter. But family obligations prevailed, and we relocated to his parents' house. I thought it would be temporary, just a few months at most. Living with David's family was a big adjustment. The house was always bustling, filled with tension and unspoken rules. His mother, Susan, was especially difficult. She was a homemaker with very traditional views on marriage and motherhood. From the moment I stepped into their home, I felt the weight of her expectations. Susan believed a woman's worth came from her ability to bear children, and since David and I didn't have kids yet, I quickly became her target. At first, the criticism was subtle. "You should really learn to cook better," she'd say, eyeing my attempts in the kitchen. "David works hard. A wife should support him more." It stung, but I tried to brush it off. I focused on my career, working late hours, determined to show them I could contribute financially. I thought that if I worked hard enough, Susan would see my worth beyond the traditional role she expected of me. However, as months turned into years, the criticisms grew harsher. I remember one particular evening, after a long day at work, coming home to find Susan waiting for me. "You know, Emma, a real woman knows how to take care of her family. I just don't see how you fit into that picture," she sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. I felt crushed. Despite my accomplishments, I was made to feel inadequate. And David? At first, he stood up for me. "Mom, Emma works hard. We're trying to have a baby. These things take time," he would say. But as the pressure built, I could sense him starting to cave under his mother's expectations. I felt utterly alone. The breaking point came when David's sister, Megan, returned home unexpectedly. She was pregnant and recently divorced, and her arrival sent the household into a frenzy. Susan was overjoyed, and for good reason. A grandchild was on the way. But when she announced that Megan would need my room, I was taken aback. "Emma, you'll have to move to the balcony," Susan ordered, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I did not expect it when my mother-in-law suddenly pushed me hard and spoke loudly. "You are not a real woman. You are a she-male. You cannot give birth." I was shocked, and my heart broke at these harsh words. I couldn't believe it. "Mom, that's not fair," David protested, but his voice was weak. I stood there in disbelief, feeling the weight of her words suffocating me. "You're not a real woman if you can't make sacrifices for family," Susan snapped at me, calling me names that cut deeper than I ever thought possible. "David, please," I begged, hoping he would stand by me. But he remained silent, caught between his wife and his mother. In that moment, I felt a rage boiling inside me. How could he let her talk to me like that? I decided right then that enough was enough. I moved to the balcony, but I also decided to take action. I couldn't keep giving my all to a family that didn't appreciate me. So, I stopped all financial support. I ceased paying for groceries and bills, effectively withdrawing my contribution. I felt empowered for the first time in ages, but it was a double-edged sword. The family relied on my income, and I knew it would hit them hard. As the days passed, the tension in the house escalated. Susan and David were furious, their financial strain becoming more evident. I could hear them arguing in the evenings, their voices raised, blaming each other for our predicament. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, knowing I was finally taking control of my life. A month later, I received an apology from both David and Susan. They realized how much they relied on me, not just financially, but also to maintain harmony in the household. But my heart had hardened. Their apologies felt insincere, just another way to manipulate me back into their control. I had made my decision. I was done. The life I had envisioned for myself, one filled with love and mutual respect, was slipping away. I planned to file for divorce, packed my belongings, and began planning my escape to New York. I left behind a life that had become a cage, ready to reclaim my independence. Moving to New York was both terrifying and liberating. As I settled into my new apartment, a small but cozy space in a lively neighborhood, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. The city buzzed around me, people hustling, cars honking, life pulsing with energy. It was a stark contrast to the suffocating silence of David's family home, and for the first time in years, I could breathe. I quickly threw myself into my work at a new marketing firm. It felt invigorating to be surrounded by ambitious colleagues who shared my passion. I took on challenging projects, reigniting my creative spark and reminding myself of what I was capable of. Each success felt like a personal victory, a testament to my independence and resilience. However, despite my newfound freedom, memories of my past haunted me. I missed the idea of family, the love I once thought I had with David. I often found myself reflecting on the emotional scars left by my time with Susan. I spent sleepless nights wrestling with doubt. Had I made the right choice? The weight of those years lingered in my heart, a reminder of the struggles I had endured. One evening, as I was working late on a campaign, my phone buzzed. It was a message from David. "Can we talk? I miss you." My heart sank. I hadn't heard from him since I left. A mix of anger and longing flooded my mind. Part of me wanted to respond, to hear him out, but another part screamed to keep moving forward. After some deliberation, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop in my neighborhood. When I walked in, I spotted him sitting in a corner, looking both relieved and anxious. His face brightened when he saw me, but I could sense the tension between us. "Emma," he said, standing up as I approached. "I'm really glad you came." He sounded sincere, yet uncertain. "Hi, David," I replied, forcing a smile. We sat down, the atmosphere thick with unspoken words. "I've missed you," he finally said, his gaze dropping to the table. "Things have been really hard at home. Mom keeps asking about you." My stomach tightened. "And what about you? How are you handling it?" "Honestly, it's tough. Mom is struggling, and she keeps trying to get me to convince you to come back." "She thinks you're the problem," he admitted, his voice wavering. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Me? I'm the problem? David, you saw how she treated me. I didn't leave for no reason." "I know, but it's complicated. She's my mom. I can't just ignore her," he said, sounding defensive. As we talked, I realized that while David hadn't changed, he was still caught in his family's web of expectations. I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps we could rebuild our relationship, but deep down, I knew I had to prioritize myself. "David, I've been rebuilding my life here," I said, meeting his eyes. "I'm happy. I don't want to go back to that toxic environment." His expression fell, and I could see the hurt in his eyes. "I don't want to lose you, Emma. I wish things could be different. It's not just about us anymore. I need to find my own path," I replied, tears welling up. "I can't keep sacrificing my happiness for your family's approval." After that meeting, I walked through the city, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. I had finally asserted my independence, but the pain of leaving David behind lingered. The city felt alive, and I reminded myself that I was finally in control of my destiny. Days turned into weeks, and I immersed myself in my work. I made new friends who inspired me and encouraged my ambitions. I took classes to expand my skills, pushing myself further than I ever thought possible. However, the pressure from David's family never fully vanished. Susan called occasionally, trying to guilt-trip me. "You were part of this family, Emma. You can't just abandon us," she would say, her tone harsh and accusatory. Each call left me drained, but I held firm. "I'm not abandoning anyone, Susan. I'm choosing to live for myself now." I was determined to protect my peace. One day, I received a frantic call from Megan. "Emma, I really need to talk to you." "It's about Mom," she said, her voice trembling. I could hear the desperation and worry in her tone. We met at a cafe near my apartment. She looked exhausted, her eyes red and puffy. "Mom hasn't stopped pressuring me since you left," she confessed. "She keeps telling me I'm the reason you left and that I need to convince you to come back." My heart sank as I listened. "Megan, you can't take that on. It's not your responsibility. You have your own life to live and a baby on the way. You don't need to bear the burden of our family's dysfunction." Tears welled up in her eyes. But she won't stop. I feel like I'm constantly failing her, and now I'm scared I'll fail my own child too. I reached across the table and held her hand. "You're not failing anyone. You have to put yourself and your baby first. Set boundaries with her. Don't let her guilt you into sacrificing your happiness." Megan nodded, but I could see the fear in her eyes. I knew it wouldn't be easy for her to stand up to Susan, but I hoped my words would help her find the courage to protect herself. A few days later, David reached out, asking if we could meet. I hesitated, unsure if I wanted to reopen old wounds, but I agreed. We met at a park, and I was struck by how tired he looked, like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Emma, I've been thinking a lot about everything," he began. "I realize how much I let my family come between us. I should have stood up for you, but I didn't, and I'm so sorry." His apologies stirred something in me, but I knew it wasn't enough. "David, I appreciate your words, but it's too late. I've filed for divorce. I need to move forward, and that means leaving all of this behind." He looked devastated but nodded slowly. "I understand. I just wish I had done things differently." "I wish things had been different too, but we can't change the past. I have to do what's right for me now," I said firmly. As I walked away from that conversation, I felt a strange sense of closure. I had made my choice, and it was the right one for me. It was time to let go and focus on building the life I deserved. In the following weeks, I found myself growing more confident and at peace. I threw myself into my work and even took up painting again. Each brushstroke felt like a reclaiming of my identity, a way to express all the emotions I had kept locked away for so long. Then, one evening, Megan called again, but this time her voice was stronger. "Emma, I finally told Mom I need space. It wasn't easy, but I did it. I'm trying to set those boundaries you talked about." I felt a surge of pride. "That's incredible, Megan. I'm so proud of you. It's not easy, but it's a step in the right direction." As we ended the call, I felt a sense of hope. Maybe my journey wasn't just about finding my own freedom, but also about helping Megan find hers. I knew there were still challenges ahead, but I was ready to face them. I was finally learning to let go of the past and embrace the future I had always wanted. After filing for divorce, I felt a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and fear. It was a tough decision, but I knew it was the right one. I needed to free myself from the toxic environment and finally live for me. I had spent so much time trying to fit into a life that wasn't mine, and now it was time to move forward, leaving everything behind. The divorce process was exhausting. David tried to convince me to reconsider, saying he would stand up to his mother and that we could start fresh. But I knew that going back would only trap me again. I told him firmly, "David, I'm done. This isn't just about your mother. It's about me needing my own life, one where I'm not constantly judged or undervalued." He looked devastated, but he knew I meant it. When the papers were signed, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was officially free from a marriage that had drained me emotionally. It wasn't just about ending things with David, but about reclaiming my identity and my voice. Susan, predictably, didn't take the news well. She called me furious, accusing me of tearing the family apart. How could you do this to us? To David? You're selfish, she shouted, her voice full of bitterness. But this time, I didn't let her words affect me. Susan, I'm not responsible for your happiness or your family's. I need to take care of myself now, I said calmly, feeling a strength I hadn't felt before. I hung up, knowing it was the last time I'd allow her to manipulate me. I decided to cut ties with all of them, including Megan. As much as I cared about her, I realized I needed to distance myself completely to heal. I sent her a heartfelt message, explaining that I needed space to move on. It hurt to let go, but I knew it was necessary. In the months that followed, I poured myself into building my new life. I focused on my career, taking on challenging projects that reignited my passion for marketing. I moved into a beautiful new apartment overlooking Central Park, a place that truly felt like mine. I began exploring the city, joining art classes, and making new friends who valued and respected me for who I was. It wasn't always easy. There were days when I felt lonely, wondering if I had made the right choices. But those moments were fleeting. Each time, I reminded myself of the strength it took to walk away from a life that was suffocating me. One day, as I was walking through Central Park, I realized just how far I had come. I had let go of the pain and resentment that had weighed me down for so long. I was no longer the woman who felt trapped and powerless. I was independent, confident, and finally at peace. Looking back, I see that my journey wasn't just about leaving a toxic marriage or an overbearing family. It was about finding myself again, my voice, my strength, my worth. I had to let go of everything that was holding me back to embrace the future I deserved. Now, I wake up every day excited for what's ahead. I've started mentoring young women in my industry, sharing my experiences, and helping them navigate their own paths. It's incredibly fulfilling, knowing that I can use my story to inspire others to stand up for themselves and never settle for less than they deserve. I've learned that true independence isn't just about being alone. It's about living authentically, making choices that align with who you are, and refusing to let anyone diminish your light. I'm proud of the woman I've become, and I'm excited for the future I'm building, one that's truly my own. I'm not sure what's next, but I know one thing for certain: I will never again compromise my happiness for anyone. I've finally found my freedom, and I'm not letting it go.